I always like to start out just kind of talking about the candidate.
Certainly.
Where'd you grow up? How'd you end up in San Leandro? Kind of your situation, family life.
Certainly. I was born in Jackson, California. All right, it's a relatively small town. At the time I was born, it was like 800 in population.
A rural community.
It's a rural community, and it's boomed to 2,500. So
wow.
It's 3 times the population today, right? It just only took 55 years.
Right. Okay.
The reality is, my family moved out to San Francisco in 1966.
Okay.
And in 1969, my mom separated from my father. And she made a very brave decision because of, some challenges in the family.
For
right?
single parents, single mothers, it was very difficult today. It was difficult then.
We had challenges because we lived in basically a single room occupancy, and
whereabouts?
Near Chinatown.
You did? Okay. All right.
Right, and those challenges actually was very formative in terms of my life. Started working in sweatshops, actually, helping my mom when I was like 6 or 7 years old. Been worked full time during the summertime when I was 10 years old. So it was definitely one of the most challenging jobs I've ever had in my life, and it gave me a lot of perspective in terms of hard work.
Right. Yeah, and commitment and getting the job done.
Yeah, and also the community itself had certain challenges.
Yeah.
There was a lot of gang warfare that was going on in San Francisco, Chinatown. I lost some friends at a very young age. Some of them I lost at the age of 11,
I remember those
10
news
11,
reports
12. Yes.
when we were younger. Just the
yes.
gang,
it culminated in the Golden Dragon.
Yeah, Golden Dragon. I absolutely
yes.
remember that. Yeah,
I was there the week before it.
Wow, look at that. And so how did you get over to San Leandro? When did that happen?
That happened about 20 years ago. My wife and I were looking for.
So you married in San Francisco and then came over here?
Yes. So we looked around for we're looking for some new homes, right? But we came upon San Leandro and said, "Oh boy, this is really nice."
Hey.
And we were looking at some of the homes, and then we found the Huron Bay development. That's when we said, "Hey, there's new homes there."
Okay. Good.
So that made sense to us, and it was a perfect fit.
Well, good. Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes.
So lots of issues. You can go to all the different candidates' websites, whether it's here in San Leandro or other cities, and there are potholes and there's things that, of course, people are annoyed with. The pothole situation. No one likes that. There's a big number on that. I understand that
it's a very big number. It's over
$100 million. The deferred maintenance on our roads is what I've heard.
It's actually more than 100 million. But then I think if we were to fix all our roads and to put them into the condition that we would like them to be, it would be over 300 million. Those are some of the numbers that were floated around. 100 million is just to get it to the acceptable pavement condition index.
Well, there's yet another challenge. So, but what I really wanted to talk about, amongst other things, is rent control. That is, we are surrounded by cities who are experimenting and have had rent control. What are your views on rent control?
Well,
in light of Costa-Hawkins and perhaps.
Outside of Costa-Hawkins, when you basically take a look, it's economic 101. It's basically you're putting a price control on housing. I understand the need for doing that, but then let's put it this way: it's a very limited supply, and typically when somebody moves out, it goes back to market rate. And the market rate readjusts itself significantly higher, and it actually limits housing for folks, and it makes it more expensive. Proof in the pudding is just take a look at San Francisco, take a look at Oakland. Oakland implemented about a decade ago, and now back then they were cheaper than San Leandro. Today they're more expensive than Fremont.
Yeah. And I know that to the degree that Costa-Hawkins is repealed, then it's more to the city to be able to regulate even beyond vacancies. And so we've got a growing homeless population, perhaps stabilized, but large. I've heard 300 the number, and a working poor population. Do you see ways the city can help stabilize or somehow give people confidence that their lives are more secure here in San Leandro?
Well, no, absolutely, and I think that's a fair question. When you take a look at housing development, we really have to look at housing diversity. We can't just focus on just single-family houses. We have to look at building all types of units. But then, if we're going to build high density, we also have to factor in open space. my community is built, over 20 years ago, and it was completed probably 15 years ago. But some of the challenges are, you have a 4-foot sidewalk where you can't really walk. You have to get off the sidewalk to,
to pass someone.
To pass somebody, or your little kid who's walking with you has to drag you, or you have to drag them.
Right.
So that open space is a lot more than just parks. It's also the sidewalks. It's also our bike lanes.
Yeah. And do you see this whole kind of tiny house development that is small houses behind houses? San Leandro, there's a lot of homes that have huge lots.
Correct.
And the ability to have those. What are your views on that? I know San Leandro has perhaps loosened up those regulations, but
I've seen a lot of the published studies on the tiny houses, as because they're lower in terms of production costs.
Right.
You still have, and I think it's a great idea, but you still have the challenges of space, because if you're going to build a tiny house, how much space are you going to talk about? Right. And moving towards a more progressive model like shared space, where you have multiple shared space within a high-density complex, that becomes where folks can use that space when they need to, or actually commingle with folks. Right. We're talking about it in terms of the workplace. Right. The workplaces where we have shared workspaces. That shared workspace, or that shared space concept, allows us to actually build more.
Right. And so finally, just with the Airbnb, I know there's a moratorium now. What are your views on Airbnb, how it is today, and how it may ultimately roll out?
Well, this is a good question. And I had to defer to some of the statements that I got from the city attorney, which is basically either we regulate, right, we ban, or we allow. If we regulate, we have to enforce it. Otherwise, we're going to be subject to lawsuits. And we would probably be subject to lawsuits regardless. So really, the option is from either ban or allow. I think what we're talking about right now is hosted versus non-hosted.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And hosted, I think, provides some degree of comfort to folks, because they know that somebody's actually watching the house.
Right. And so that regulation, of course, there are costs involved in regulating in industry.
Absolutely.
And so that's something that we have to be aware of. Very good. Another thing I wanted to touch on is, of course, there's a huge unmet debt in the city.
Correct.
And so you just mentioned, I was saying $203 million. These are huge numbers for a small city. So I know it's a problem that's been building for decades.
Correct.
And a systemic problem, because most California cities have tremendous debt. So what do you see about our options of stemming the tide and maintaining it, so that our general fund isn't absolutely sapped with payments to service the state?
Absolutely. So part of the challenge is that the problem was actually started at the state level. 1999, 2001, right? They had great markets at that time until the dot-com bomb.
Right. And
even the actuary and former Governor Davis said, had he known everything that he knew today, he would not have signed it.
Right.
So really, it's a multi-pronged approach. You have to look at it from the local level, because this problem, we have to adjust to it. And I think we did a pretty good job in terms of, getting the employees to pay into their share through a very good mediation process. But on top of it, we have to look to the state. The League of California Cities is a wonderful organization that really brings a lot of the cities together. And we had to look to the League of California Cities. We had to look to the state. The state really has to work with us to solve these problems, and not just kick the can down the road. And
do you see yourself perhaps taking some kind of lead role or active participation in that League of?
Well, I talked to the legislators. I talked to the legislators. I talked to Assembly Member Banta. He's wonderful. I've talked about a number of issues. This was one of the issues. Sure. The other issue, of course, I've talked about looking at EEOC as just a rubber stamp, and we got to look at the application process to make sure that fair housing and employment is actually fair.
Right. Good. Thank you. And then finally, just with retail, our downtown seems to have we've got a couple new restaurants, and things are
Yes.
moving along in a positive direction.
I was very instrumental in that role.
Well, thank you. And but still, retail has its problems.
Yes,
You know,
it has
the
its challenges.
The big box kind of revolution hit it, and then Amazon
Correct.
is nailing it. So, is there anything the city can do? Because what really is left, perhaps, are restaurants. I mean, restaurants seem to do well in walkable cities. And,
Correct.
Is there anything that the council or the mayor's office can do to kind of evolve San Leandro into a more friendly, walkable city?
Well, I think we need to support our small businesses because our small businesses are bringing the services that we like. One of my favorite restaurants, and I'm probably putting a plug, is Great Wall. It's a family-owned business.
Right.
Even they had to curtail their hours because of all the policies that we put in place. Before, they used to be open early in the morning all the way until late at night. Now they actually have a 4-hour divide. And we're probably going to see a lot more of that because the city has not been data-driven. I've been pushing it for it to be data-driven since day one, ever since I got elected. I think the biggest challenge that we have in terms of understanding technology, not everybody is going to be on that forefront. Proof in the pudding is just take a look at the Facebook congressional hearings, 10 hours. It was really painful to watch because most of our legislatures did not understand technology.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. Well, we're coming kind of to the end of our moment here. I wanted just to give you an opportunity to talk about anything that you're particularly proud of that you've done over these last 6 years. And
certainly. I would really focus on diversity and inclusion. One of the things I talked about is the fact that we had language challenges. And finally, we got that study that showed that 36% of the population in San Leandro doesn't even speak English, and that's based off a 2015 number from the American Community Survey, which is the census. So we've had a lot of accomplishments, and when I first spoke about it, everybody on the council, including then council member Cutter, didn't really comment on it. I commented on it because I hit 6,000 doors, and I could tell you what the challenges were. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done on that. I focused on the businesses. I supported then Mayor Cassidy on basically the moratorium on fees. It didn't really make a change to the numbers. It could have been partially because of the economy, but it was something that to spur small business development. So we need to really focus on that because the services is what makes a city attractive. I've also focused on public Wi-Fi. The first day that I got into office, I talked about it. The reason why I talked about it was that my colleagues in San Francisco were thinking about doing it, and they were sharing the idea with me. So I said, hey, we should do that in San Leandro. We're getting into that fiber. So we finally got into downtown and continue to push, and now we're getting 9 new locations.
Super.
All right, 2 of them are in the downtown plazas, 7 parks. And I'll tell you right now, you go down to Marina Park around the picnic area, we have high-speed public Wi-Fi. And then I put it into our CIP to make sure that we put public Wi-Fi, free public Wi-Fi into our social services safety nets, like the building futures, the Davis Streets, the stepping stones. Right? We got to make sure that we plug that digital divide, because you think about it, when you and I went to school, when we had a pencil, right, we were able to do our schoolwork. If we didn't have that pencil, we would fail. Today, all the kids have to do their homework online. All the books are online. And if they don't have the internet, they would fail. So we need to make sure that we give the tools for our kids to succeed. And I focused on that.
Well, we're coming to the end of the moment here because YouTube has their limitations. So
Yes.
I want to thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
in. Thank you for running. I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to Talkable San Leandro. And until our next episode, keep on talking to your neighbors. Less of this, more of this, and we'll all be better off. Thank you very much.